So in this video, we take a look at environment fog, an atmospheric effect that simulates fog, haze, atmospheric dust, and other atmospheric aerosols. If I run the IPR right now, we get this bare-bone lighting with V-Ray sun and sky. By adding environment fog, we can really make it come alive. Let's see how to do that. To add environment fog to your scene, simply from the rendering menu, open up the environment and effects window. The shortcut is 8. Come down and from the atmospheric section, click on this add button and add an environment fog. Now, if you select the environment fog itself, you can see and adjust all of its parameters. The first parameters I want you to look at are fog distance and fog height. Fog distance controls the fog density. Larger values make the fog more transparent, while smaller values make it more dense. If I set the fog distance to 1 meter, we get a much denser fog. And if I start increasing it to 3 meters, 5, 7, or 10 meters, the fog becomes less dense and more transparent. And this immediately gives a more real vibe to the image. Then we have fog height, as the fog is supposed to start from a certain height and continue downward indefinitely. This parameter determines the starting point along the z-axis where the fog starts. Let me set the fog distance to around 2 meters to get a denser fog. Now, if I decrease fog height to 0.2 meter, the fog starts from a much lower height. And if I start increasing it to 0.5 meter, 1 meter, or maybe 5 meter, the fog will start from a higher height downward. Let's set the fog distance to 10 meter and fog height to 5 meters, because I know these buildings in the scene are about 4 or 5 meters tall. Using this fog color, you can determine the exact color of the fog or haze in your scene. Let's try a few on, maybe something cold and blue with the RGB values of 105, 201, and 2027. Maybe something warm and hot with the RGB values of 217, 177, and 147. Nice. To add a bit more to the overall realism, we can turn on Scatter GI. When Scatter GI is enabled, the fog will also scatter global illumination, which obviously makes the image look better, but it would slow down the render. And Scatter Bounces controls the number of GI or global illumination bounces inside the fog when Scatter GI is enabled. So if I increase it from 1 to 2, it will scatter the light rays more and will result in a brighter scene that would still make the render slower and harder to clean. So as you are increasing this value more and more, you will get fairly brighter scene, a bit more washed up scene, and also the render will become much longer. But it really depends on what you want to achieve. In this case, I'm just gonna limit the scatter bounce to 1. In some cases, we can use fog emission color instead of the scatter GI and get quite similar results without an increase in render time. Fog emission gives the fog or dust particles some sort of self-illumination. Let's turn off scatter GI and change the fog emission color from black to white. And immediately you can start to see a quite similar result to when we had Scatter GI turned on, and the render cleans up much faster. Obviously, Scatter GI will give you a bit more control as you can adjust scatter bounces, and it is obviously more realistic, but it is much more slower. We can try a few other fog emission colors just to see what we can get. Maybe let's get back to white. And finally set it to black for now and enable Scatter GI. When you add environment fog to your scene, you have put an obstacle for the light beams to reach further, and therefore you will get a darker scene overall, which is natural. But to remedy that, if you are interested in a brighter scene, we can adjust the exposure and contrast a tad in the VFB, or we can obviously adjust the camera exposure. So I'm gonna add an exposure layer, increase the exposure value to 1.25 and contrast to 0.2, 0.25. Okay, now this looks better. And obviously it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Maybe you're looking for much darker, bluer, colder scene. Now down here in this notes section, you can confine the effect of the environment fog to certain parts or specific lights. I have this box in the scene. I just need to make it visible. Let's say we want to make sure that the environment fog is only visible inside this box. To do that, we can simply add our box to this gizmos list. So let's do that. And now we need to make sure the box is not visible in the render. Just make it invisible. And now the environment fog is only visible within this box. And as you can see, the fog height parameter is grayed out, and wherever the box is, the fog effect will be in there. Up here we have gizmos fall off radius. When this value is larger than 0 and the fog effect is contained within a gizmos like the box object that we had here, this option allows you to specify a fall off radius for it. This way the fog effect does not have sharp edges at the edges of the gizmo that you have defined. Let's try 10, 30, and 70. For now, set it to 0 and remove the box from the list. We also have this lights list. If you uncheck this use all lights option, then you can add only the lights that you want to affect the environment fog to the list down here. Now in this maps section, you can assign a texture to control the fog color, density, and emission. When you use a texture to control those parameters, this texture samples value will be used to determine the quality of the texture sampling through the fog volume. Step size up here determines the size of one step through the volume. Smaller steps produce more accurate results but are slower to render in general, and dense volumes require smaller step sizes than more transparent volumes. In practice, step sizes that are 2 to 3 times smaller than the fog distance parameter work well. You rarely need to change these parameters, so I'm not gonna make the lessons any longer. For a detailed explanation of each parameter, you can check out V-Ray manual or our old V-Ray 3 course, which is included with the full version of the course. You most likely use environment fog in a similar situation to this scene. If you are coming from Arnold renderer, V-Ray does not have a volume scattering atmospheric effect, which is very useful, and I hope Chaos Group adds it to V-Ray sometimes in the future. Now, for the final render, let's open up our render setup window. I'm gonna increase the resolution to 2000s by 1500s. Set the noise threshold to 0.001 and mean shading rate to 24. Add a denoiser render element and change the denoiser preset to mild, and now we can start our final render. Let me just show you the final render here. There it is. We can use a simple white balance layer to make the whole image feel, cooler or warmer depending on what you're looking for. And obviously you can do that in any other post-processing tool like Photoshop or After Effects or Fusion quite easily. In the exposure layer, we can increase the contrast a tad as well or decrease it. And the exposure, if we go ahead and enable our lens effects layer, the sun would start to look more natural with the bloom and glare applied. In this case, we can set the intensity to 0.3 and bloom to 0.8 and adjust the size. Cool. Now we can go ahead and save out the render. So in this lesson, we learned about environment fog in V-Ray for 3ds Max. See you in the next one.